So here we have another AGM battery that's of low quality, I would say. We went to check if the terminals were tight. Check it out. The battery's coming apart internally. Let's take a look underneath this LT1 Elite Chassis build. And for you that want some light, here we go. So this Jeep is on the exhaust rack right now, and it still needs some cleaning up. We still have a little bit of wiring to do, as you can see. You can see our spreader pipe for the cooling system. Here's the 3-link system with the Curry axle. We've got 2 lowers and 1 upper. I'm more of a fan of the 4-link setup, but that's what the Elite is. This is the stock LT1 oil cooler, and what we do is remove that, put a machine billet plate on, and then we run an external cooler, kind of like what GM does on their other engines. So coming back, if we look at the exhaust, that was really tricky. Look at all the stuff we have to deal with. We've got the drive shaft, we've got the upper control arm, lower control arm. You can see that we got vents and brake lines and other things on that. You want to wrap the exhaust because the heat can damage. I've seen ARB plastic lines melt even when they're running along the frame rail and the exhaust is over here because it gets that hot. And to make things worse is we got this skid plate, and this skid plate is not vented. So basically that space between the body and the skid plate turns into an oven. So Dan has run the driver's side over to the passenger side. We are running converters. You notice that we've got the pipes wrapped all the way back. The converters have shields on them. We've got upstream and downstream O2 sensors. These are the really cool GM stainless manifolds, and I've seen those knock sensors melt if you don't run the factory shields on them. That's the knock sensor up there. The starter motor hasn't been installed yet. That's our crankshaft position sensor up there, oil level sensor, and that's the starter motor plug, which we haven't plugged in. So we got full emissions, front O2s, upstreams and downstreams. Now you can't see it, but above the skid plate we've got our muffler, and the system is wrapped all the way back, and then it dumps out here. Pretty simple but effective. But you don't really have a whole lot of room with this Elite chassis because of all the mechanical stuff going on. That is the Genright fuel tank, and that's the large one. I'm not sure how many gallons it is, but most of you know that the fuel tank normally goes over here. So in order to get this true 4-link setup, they had to move the tank to the back. So that again poses more, I'm not going to say issues, but just more work, because now we've got to get the electrical and the fuel lines all the way to the back of the vehicle instead of just using all the factory components. He's got king coilovers, obviously, speed bumps, a lot of work in these Elite chassis. So this is all pretty functional and clean back here. The evap canister was relocated over here. What you're seeing right there is the vent solenoid for the canister. That's a factory GM component. And we've got our transfer case. You can't see a whole lot up there. Looking at the bottom of this LT1, you can see our hydraulic mounts. You can see that lower strap on the mount. Make sure you run those. It boxes everything in. There's the factory GM air compressor, which is a variable displacement. Looks like the tire pressure monitoring system module has been relocated here. We got some pretty tall sway bars, sway bar links that is. Not sure what these brakes are, but they look pretty impressive. This is our wheel speed sensor. There's going to be 4 of them, 1 on each wheel. And I suggest you run that. A lot of guys try to fool the ABS system by running 1 sensor or just eliminating it altogether. But it's nice to have ABS when you need it. So try to run the wheel speed sensors if you can. These rotors are slotted. We got limiting straps, which can be important if you go negative gravity. Those are some large calipers. And guys, what you got to make sure of, you can go larger and larger on your calipers, but you got to make sure that you have enough volume in the master cylinder to push it. If you don't, and you have a small master cylinder, then the pedal's going to basically go to the floor. It might stop, but the pedal's not going to feel right. So I'm not sure what this has in it. I'm guessing it has a JKU booster in it. We're going to find out. As I stated in a previous video, I'm not a fan of this. This truss tie rod has the bolt coming in from the bottom, and really is not as long as it needs to be. So if that nut were to come off, that bolt's going to fall down, drive into the wheel and tire, and you're stuck. A little view from the bottom. There's our AC condenser, radiator, Camaro SS fan. Looking at the front here, we've got a heavy-duty drag link and tie rod. You can see that they're not running standard ball joints. They're running these Heim styles, which work pretty good, but they might get clunky over time. If we look at the ram, they've got it set up between the differential cover and the tie rod. I hope you can see that. Maybe you can come in underneath. One of the reasons a ram can kill death wobble is, look at that relationship. It's going right from the axle to the tie rod. So if those wheels start to get into a harmonic or vibrate, that ram is going to kill it. If that ram was not there and these wheels started to wobble side to side, it would go through that spindle, up along the drag link into the pitman arm, which is attached to the sector shaft, then to the frame. All sorts of areas that can have slop and play. Even the frame can flex, and it will attenuate that vibration until it turns into full death wobble. So having the ram directly on the tie rod is one of the few sure cures for death wobble, at least in most cases. So I want to say, I think this customer did a good job with this build. He didn't go excessive. There's not all sorts of electronic gadgets everywhere. He went simple, clean, trying to keep it reliable. This thing should be really fun to drive.